This is the Argon News Network, where today we're doing Doc Brown. G'day, 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 you absolute bunch of bloody legends. Loser Bum back on your screen with some low quality, low scripted, single take, single board computer, 8-bit modern retro content. And retro it is, because we're going back to the 80s. Yes, strap into your DeLorean, hit it to 88 miles an hour, and let's go to Pine Hill Valley or whatever the place was called. And it's going to be a two-parter. I've got so much content. It's going to be a really long video. Actually going to split it in two. And we're going back to the 80s via the way of emulation. We're going to look at maybe Texas Instrument, TRS80. Who knows? Is it going to be an Apple II, C64, IBM PC? Stay tuned to find out. So, and you know, we are so 80s that I am wearing a Casio watch. And not just that, I'm doubling up. I'm wearing a Swatch watch. Yeah, very, very 80s. I'm not just listening to a music compact cassette on my Sony Walkman here. I'm listening to a compact cassette here on my Sony Sports Walkman with AM, FM radio and the claim to be waterproof, which it probably no longer is after 40 years. In fact, the seals have melted together. Yeah, I wouldn't really put this underwater. But yeah, and finally, we are so 80s, we are drinking a can of Coca-Cola, which still has a ring pull tab on it. This is probably the last one within a 50-mile radius. Ring pull, you could take it off. You had a little bit which you could lose. You could cut your finger on it. You could make chains out of it. You could flick the ring off the thing. Oh man, the world went downhill when we replaced these manly ring pull tabs with those weird they have today. But what are you gonna do? Times they are a-changing. So we're going to get into some serious emulation here, and we're going to start, or at least I thought we were going to start with a TI99 4A. My stepbrother had one of these, so I was looking forward to that. And we're going to use a piece of software called OS Boost by Sean Seinstra, big contributor, heavyweight of the community. Sean, supposedly down in the Australia, yeah, down there, right? Not going to make jokes about certain beers or certain crustaceans, which I'll show tossed on cooking implements. But yeah, thanks for Sean. So then when I actually researched for this article and looked at this OS boot, I realized that in my mind I had conflated and completely mixed up two different computers. One is the TI99 48 and the other one is actually the Tandy, the TRS80. For some reason those were the same computer in my mind. They're not. You know, it was like my thinking was, well, they're American, they're 8-bit, they're old, they're grey and black. Gotta be the same thing. No, not at all. The TI99 4A used a somewhat proprietary and unusual CPU by Texas Instruments, because they were a chip manufacturer. The TRS80 uses a proper Zilog Z80, and that's what it is. And this is not even 80s, as you can see. Some of these were launched even in the 70s. What I like really about the TRS80, specifically this Model 4 and some of the others, is they were not really personal computers. They were sort of semi-office computers where you had the monitor, the floppy or tape drive, and the keyboard all in a single housing, just like my trusty Sharp MZ80K over here, which was brought me to the Argon in the first place, because Barnardo many years ago, or a couple of years ago, did a restoration on one of those. So this thing here emulates a so-called well-behaved TRS80 Model 4. I love the idea of a well-behaved TRS80 as opposed to one which like flick knives and has got the thing and a cigarette like an Asbo TRS80. No, this is little Lord Fauntleroy, which is being emulated. And so let us switch right over to the old device there. Of course, as usual, all the links in the description below. So on our Argon, you have to put the osboot.bin file in your MOS folder, because you will be calling it with parameters. And the parameters are the operating system disk image, which is that file third from the top, trs-ose.bin. I've just made a copy and just called it TRS for less typing. And then you put in the name of the disk file, which is the second disk. .dsk, and off we jolly well go. Flip of the mode, and here we go. Green characters on a black background. That's the way it is. It's loading one image, it's reading some bytes, it's doing stuff, and ta-da, here we are. So Yeah, it's asking what function. I only ever had 0 here. That works. And here we are. We are at the shell of LS-DOS, which apparently is a more modern re-implementation of TRS-DOS. And you have your usual commands, dir. No stinking folders here. You can just space and then you see the second floppies, right? No folders. This is older than directories, than subfolders. It doesn't even use a dot as a file separator. It seems to be limited to 8 characters for the file name, but rather than using a dot for the extension, it's actually using a slash, which I thought was quite unusual. And there's not much here, right? We can poke around, we can directory, and now we have the challenge. There's one here where I was actually able to do something, so I'm just going to go Rubik. I don't have to tell it that it's on the second drive. He's just going to look everywhere and find it. So Rubik/cmd. And it's doing something, right? Rubik to TRS, and if I press keys, things happen on the screen. But it's not really a Rubik's Cube. And why is it not a Rubik's Cube? Let's go back here and explain why. It's a well-behaved TRS Model 4, but it's in a terminal mode. So even though the computer normally had a screen and a floppy and the keyboard, we're actually logging in almost round the back door through a terminal emulator, so graphics are not yet available. And I did spend a little bit of time looking for software to run on this to show you guys, but I just ran out of time. And you kind of have to think is like, well, we would need software which is written specifically for the use case of somebody doing a text-only game via the serial port or the terminal on a computer which has got a built-in keyboard and a built-in monitor, right? So the programmer is never thought of that particular use case, right? Because why would I write the software in such a way like I can do it only over the terminal if I've actually got a proper UI in there? I suspect that one day maybe Sean or somebody else will fork this and put it up a little. But hey, we were able to see stuff move there with the old Rubik's Cube. So yeah, hey, we're back to the 80s. TRS80 is there, and as we go, Sean Seinstra has said he'll upload a disk because, as always, you know, if you look at his, if you look here, what can I run with it? Well, it's flipping Zork. It's always Zork. Just like you have so-called carcination or whatever it's called, where the shape of the crab has evolved 8 times independently, completely independently. Branches of the tree of life have wound up with a crab, something that looks exactly like a crab but had completely different ancestors. It seems to be a thing that when you're in 8-bit retro computing, you will find yet another way to run Zork. We can do it at the moment via the VESA VT, we can do it via running CPM, we can do it on here. We've seen other ways of doing it. So yeah, while we're here on the TRS80, so the Model 4 is this pretty one. I was actually, oh yeah, and I will share the link to the files which you need to load. So this is the OS for LS-DOS, and here are some folders I found or some files I found online with some TRS80 software. So maybe somebody who has more of a history with this machine can go dig in and share with the community down in the comments or elsewhere, and maybe we come back and show this stuff. What I thought was kind of cool is the number. I'd forgotten the number of things. See, look, you see, this is I think which got me TRS80 Model 3 black, silver, American, and then over here I got a TI99, right? Black, silver, American. That's where the confusion came of. And they did a number of different here. There's the Model 4, and then I did remember that there were other ones. So there's a portable one here, right? I think, or at least with a disconnected keyboard. But there was the Tandy color computer, and they even had rebranded Casio and Sharp pocket computers, which they also called TRS80, completely incompatible, just rebranding, right? Stuff never come, and it all went all the way up to Tandy 1000s, which were PC clones, early PC clones. Remember those as well. As I went down this rabbit hole, and it's my privilege to go down the rabbit hole and drag you lot with me, I stumbled across this thing. Never heard of it, right? Dick Smith computer. Sounds like a filthy joke. This is actually a kit computer which was sold by Dick Smith in the Electronics Australia magazine. So you could build your own one of these, which is also on a Z80. I stumbled across this because one of these repositories actually refers to a Dick Smith computer because they also had a TRS80 clone. This Dick Smith seems to be a local Australian New Zealand retailer. which even had a thing called the Wizard, which looks suspiciously like a knockoff of the Intellivision. And they had Apple II clones, and they had no, they didn't, TRS80 clones, etc., etc. But so kind of cool that this Dick Smith, which we do have to think, there's this guy called Snake selling a lot of Argons and other single board computers down in the Southern Hemisphere in Australia. And Snake's real name is Fred Smith. And Smith is such a rare name, just like Dick and Fred in Australia. Maybe there's a connection. Do your research, right? Don't know. Open, my third eye is open. Anyway, enough about the TRS80 and Smith's Dick. Let's carry on. So this is not really 80, but in the same vein, also by Seinstra, I found this amazing thing called OS Boot Z. There's not much to look at. We'll pop over there, right there. Same sort of syntax. Hang on, let me see if I get it right. So it also has to be in your MOS folder. So OS Boot Z. And then you need the OS. I've renamed the OS image again to make it easier. And then you need a disk image, zfs.img, with a dot rather than a comma. And there we go, and it's loading ZealOS, right? And we're at an A drive, and it booted pretty fast, right? And there's not much you can do here. It's not dir, it's ls, and there's only an init and a simple text, because this is a very, very simple image, which the gentleman on Discord, on the channel, if you looked for Discord, Argon80 and the ZealOS channel, you'll find these files, the OS and the disk file, but a gentleman by the name of Turbos kindly uploaded this image file, and you can do, less commands, simple .text. So, it's an operating system which it goes A drive like DOS, but it asks you to do ls like Unix, so it's a little bit different. There's not much in there. Q, is it Q? There it is. You can also do a hex dump, let's say, of the simple.txt file, and there it is. Now, not much to look at, but why was I so fascinated by this thing? ZealOS is an operating system which is a modernized fork of the 16-bit Temple operating system, right? The Temple operating system I had stumbled across a while back. It's an operating system made by a single person, guy called Terry Davis. Tragic story. The gentleman had, schizophrenia and ultimately died under tragic circumstances. Mental health is never good for a joke, and we're very sorry for him and his family. But with that intensity of, the mania which goes with some of these severe mental health disorders, with a religious upbringing, he just built this operating system from scratch in just himself, right? From scratch, the entire thing, the compiler, it's rolled in a programming language which he called the HolyC. Instead of the HolyC in the Vatican, it's the HolyC. And he built a flight simulator and a compiler and a kernel, and you can do stuff like this. And I guess he passed on in the late in the 2010s or something like that. As I said, very tragic, but somebody took this operating system, forked it into a thing called ZenithOS, and ZenithOS, you won't find it on GitHub. You have to go on archive.org, right? You have to go on archive.org to find the ZenithOS from which ZealOS was ported, and which then was ultimately then enabled on the Argon in a very, very basic way. And I think you'll agree, if you look at some of these screens, obviously this is made by somebody who likes pixels, right? And somebody who wants to do his own operating systems, who likes to have hand-on, and is a little bit funny in the head. I do believe that Mr. Davis, rest his soul, would have fit really well into our community. Sorry for the little joke there. And if you go to the ZenithOS, here's a direct quote from Terry himself. The CIA encourages code obfuscation. They make it more complicated than necessary. I think the community, lots of us can identify with that particular quote. So ZealOS still very much in a early stage, just like the TRS80 emulator. And but we'll watch this space. Maybe there'll be more developments as we go. Okay, and I know now because you guys clicked on the thumbnail, you didn't come here to look at TRS80s or Texas Instruments or weird schizophrenic operating systems out of the 2000s. You were like, hey, these guys said that there's Apple II on here and things like that. So yep. Let me see. World premiere, drum roll, Argon TV research labs have made a basic proof of concept universal emulator for Argon, which is able to emulate a bunch of systems, none of which except Pac-Man are Z80 based. And haha, if you don't believe me, ye of little faith, let me demonstrate. Oh bugger, I have to reboot. Dear viewers, this is a unique moment in the channel. I think it's the first time in, 4 years, 5 years, 80 plus videos that I'm actually uploading a video with a video edit. Those who know the channel know that I want to do these single take. I enjoy doing them single take. Stream of consciousness, mow the mouth. I also really hate sitting at a computer, music editing, video editing. It's just not something very satisfactory. Unfortunately, my VGA capture device, which cost me a whole $8 or whatever it was, very cheap, sometimes get stuck, especially when changing graphics modes, and that just happened. So without that, let's go back into the actual universal emulator for Argon. Let's switch over to the other thing, and here we are. Very simple syntax. I've got it over here in the emu folder. So let's start. Here we go. PC Junior, very legendary failure there by IBM. Yep. There it is, and I'll warn you ahead of time, these emulations are very rough and ready. They barely boot, they're just proof of concept. And there you go, the boot screen for IBM 120K. See, it's trying. Yeah, but it kind of failed. Okay, so we got that guy. And now, of course, it's crashed. I need to reboot. Next one. That's unusual. Why do they reboot? Oh, I need to exit. I think I used the wrong key to exit. My mistake. Are we back? We're back. Yep. Next one. CD emu. Emu. IBM. .emu. Whoop. Just IBM, no extension. Emu IBM. And there it is, right? Pretty cool, huh? And you can escape with it. No, it's crashed on me again. Yeah, do one more. Oh, that's weird. And by the way, you're noticing that the boot process on my Argon is really, really slow. I mentioned that this is a part 1 of 2. That is because the next one I'm going to be showing is the MSX emulator by the Sorcerer. I just recently realized that was a Terry Pratchett reference. Because of that, I have a very funky version of MOS, which takes a while to boot and seems to be causing instability with this emulator, so we might not be able to show all systems in the interest of time. So let's go with an Apple II A2. Amazing, because these are not actually native Z80 machines, and we are able to emulate them. Pretty good. Like we're here, and it's crashed on me again. Okay, I'll stop being silly here. Of course, I'm not emulating random like 8088s or 6502s on an Argon. I'm good, but I'm not that good. So I was trolling you, and very simply what I did was take this cool thing, also by Synstra, called ANSY Play. So it's an ANSY player. You know ANSY art, like text-based art like this, right? So, and they are shared in so-called ANS files. So people back then would spend a huge amount of time taking these character-based with like colors and flashing, whatever, to make various pictures. And I just grabbed a few from a site which does dumb, Apple II logos and IBM PC and whatnot. It's just it's just a little joke. So sorry for trolling you there. You know how we are on the channel. Hey, if you object to being trolled like this, let me know down in the comments. If you want to be trolled more like this, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Remember to tell your friends to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. So back to the ASCII. At the moment, I can only display the ones which have an 80 by 25, at least in the version which I have downloaded, which is very unfortunate because I'm not going to show them here because it's a family-friendly channel. A lot of this ANSY art was like blocky character ladies in various stages of undress, looking very 80s and very non-biological. I will leave those for you. Anyway, yeah, that's what we have here. So let's see, while it's in the background, it's rebooted. So let's do one final one. We had the Apple II, and here we have the Commodore 64 EMU, and all I did was literally rename the the ANSY play into emu.bin, put it in the MOS folder, rename the files from .ans to emu, and then that's it. A bit of fun. So emulate C64. Whoop. There we go. It looked kind of convincing. It looks kind of convincing. And it's funny. It used to work better than this. Maybe it's my VDP. This one. No, it crashes every time. So with that, I think we are approaching the end of the video. As mentioned, part 2 coming up at some point in the medium, intermediate, something kind of future. And then, yeah, we're showing the MSX emulation, which was a fun thing. Maybe I find some other emulations out there. So, fun little trip to the 80s with our Walkman and our swatches and all of our things. Last thing I'll say, and there is just a sneak preview, I've got this cute little package here from PCBWay. I'm not going to show you what's inside, but this is a freedom. We are going to release the Argon Light 2 Olimex edition, at the very least, from the shackle of the corporate overlords with the contents of this box. So stay very tuned to that. Gonna be very, very exciting. With all of that, I want to say that you're all a bunch of bloody legends. I'm Loserbum. You've been just slightly trolled today because I am going to put some screenshots in the thumbnail because, of course, I am. And with that, I am out of here.